So we have a special board meeting this evening so that we can consider business that we did not get to at our last regularly scheduled board meeting. Felt that it would be prudent for us to deal with that as we had not decided whether we were going to have a July 28th board meeting or if we we're going to go to September or not. So have this board meeting this evening to consider the unfinished business and a couple of items that arose from the last agenda. So with that, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Second. Okay. Any additions? No? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Report on in-camera meeting held from 6 to 7 is easy because there was no in-camera meeting from 6 to 7. Old business. We have the item of Aspen Daycare. Do you want to speak to this, or do you want me to, or?
Well, it's kind of a joint effort with Bernadette and I, and feel free if you want to dive in. There's just some other thoughts that we had about the process, and brought to the board if they want to consider giving them boys and girls club the after-school care.
Okay.
And then carrying through the RFP process.
Yeah. As I understand it, there is not enough room inside the school at this point to have an in-house daycare in the fall, but that it would be wise for us to continue on with the RFP to sort of see where we get to in terms of whether we think there may be space inside the school next year, or whether what the board's feelings are about citing a portable there. If we feel we would want a member of the public to pay for that, or maybe we would have a change of heart and feel that we should pay for portables, or if that's the case, maybe we wouldn't.
And of course, as we stated before, it would be nice to review the policy and make sure everything ties together to have a shift what we have.
Okay, so the policy review, would you see that happening at the Finance Committee or at the Policy Advisory Committee, do you think?
Or the Board of Advisory. If you're going to be there. If the last time it was largely about rates, it was done at the Finance Committee.
I just wonder about the piece about if we're thinking RFP is policy. But I'm thinking about the cost of citing an exterior daycare. That might be a financial piece. Can we refer to both, do you think?
Well, you could send the finance for the decisions around, the rates, big picture stuff, and then send it to the policy just to make sure that, that would then give the other partners a chance to look at this problem.
Okay, what do you think? Fran?
So, just to clarify that the policy that we have doesn't mandate or include or an RFP process. So if we are considering shifting to that, then I think it makes sense to send the policy to the Policy Advisory Committee to look at that. And just thinking about the timeline, maybe it makes sense for it to go there first, and then the outcome of that can determine what happens with the request for proposal process with respect to Aspen and everywhere else. As opposed to if we do it dealing with Aspen first, it's somewhat atypical, so it is atypical having the request for proposal process. So maybe it makes sense to say in hindsight, we didn't look at it fully before we came to the decision to put out the RFP process, and that now maybe we do need to have a big look at it through policy committee first. But that does leave us with the loose ends of what to do with the request for proposal process that we've initiated.
Anyone else have some thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I absolutely appreciate the policy committee. I think on the issue of the RFP that's out right now, I think it's probably cancelled. We have a policy in place, and until such time as that policy is changed, that should basically rule how we do our business. So I'm not seeing a financial issue that comes forward here, other than the possibility if we ever decide to say portables, but I think we would be looking at those as a one-off on each one, as opposed to all the schools having a portable for daycare. So on that issue, it's not something that would necessarily be in policy.
Anybody else? Any thoughts? Just one time. Okay.
An additional thought, that also leaves us not just with the unfinished business of what to do with the request for proposal process, but what to do with the application from the Boys and Girls Club. So what I would suggest in terms of the application is treat it the way I understand these applications were treated in the past, with one exception, and that review the application and then we determine if we would award that in the context of the limited space that we now know is available, and ask them for a short term, like as in 1 year.
Just for clarity, the policy as it sits now, you're referring to only ever applied to one instance, right? Because the policy review that was 05 was the last one before that. And that was quite a different process, which is what created the need for the change to the policy in 2005. And that was where previously it had actually been a process where the principal approved whether they
So the 05 policy has only been used once?
What? In that aspect, it at all. We didn't follow exactly the definition.
No. So, Tom?
So we have the suggestion on the table that the policy be sent to the policy advisory committee for comment. So I think I hear that, and I think that's fine. The second question is, do we abandon the current RFP process in total and just focus in on this particular application that's before us? So that's the second question. The third question is, on what basis do we, and for me the more important question, on what basis are we evaluating whether this should be given the go-ahead or not? To some degree, and perhaps I'm oversimplifying it, it seems a little bit academic, because there is no space that's currently available in the school to offer the full robust program that they're proposing. And if by extension the request is for me as a board member to say, well, I'll pony up some dollars to support the location of, or the development of, or the building of space outside of it, whether it be affordable or something else, then the answer would be no from my perspective. So I guess I come back to the briefing note that you prepared, Glenn, and what it does conclude is, or suggests that an option for the board is to provide approval, and I'm assuming for a time-limited period, not open-ended, for them to start an after-school care program that will run post-school ending until 6 p.m.
The policy act says that there is a year for review, unless the contract gets given, that would be what we would do. And just a little further around the policy itself, it does contemplate where, on an ad hoc basis, the board would approve if someone wanted to put their own building on there. Some people are aware of that. Right? So we need to run the RFP and see if anybody actually comes up with that solution, right?
Okay.
Were we not considering moving on to Corniche in order to try and draw away some of the Valley View overcrowding?
But yeah, that was, to my mind, the whole reason we went as far as to get to Corniche, and I had actually didn't follow the policy. So, I felt that through the discussions of that trying to find solutions that we could move the boundary of what we get to that level that we actually do that.
Oh, I'm just wondering, would it be null and void or policy, what they've put as their proposal is completely different from what we're suggesting, so how would that play out with our policy? You know, and I guess we have to take this to them to say, are you even interested in this? I'm kind of on the same lines with Danny. There's no space in our school right now, and the way our government is cutting the funding on everything left, right, and center, I cannot, in good conscience, fork out money for affordable at this point in time.
What do you think?
It's good.
I guess from my perspective too, for me, if there's available space to support a daycare or after-school care, I'm fine with that. But we just went through the painful process of cutting a bunch of money out of our budget, and I couldn't see myself shelling out money to renovate space or to site a portable. And I'm not so sure, actually, with the decisions that are sort of coming up in the fall, that I would really be prepared to say that I would like to see if somebody would like to pay to site a portable at that school. I don't really know what we're doing with that school for sure yet. Not that we're really seriously contemplating changes, but we have to leave our options open. I think it's important for us to do that at this point. So I would be okay with an after-school care, but if there's no space inside the school right now for a daycare, then to me that's as far as I would go with this proposal and see where it goes. I think we should send it to the policy committee, though. I think, like you've talked about sort of the implications of people moving their own portable onto our property and things, and I think that since that is a new thing that we've done in the past few years, I think we do need to talk about that, and that's sort of why I think it should go to the finance committee a bit, because Len, you're on the finance committee. Maybe you could be like a guest speaker or something at the policy advisory committee to speak to that, but I think it does need to be addressed. So, Corinne?
I think, for me, if we did decide to go ahead and send it to the policy committee, and we also offered them space for an after-school daycare for the 4-year period, I think we need to make it clear to them that if it should come back from the policy that now we're at an RFP process instead, that they won't be getting preferential treatment, but that they will be free to apply to have the program in line with the policy.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but has this policy not already been sent for the policy advisory committee?
Oh yeah, I did a little digging on that one, and actually it was last October, but it sort of hasn't been taken off the shelf yet and looked at the policy advisory committee. So I think that we sort of have to renew. Well, we have to kind of renew our intention here because it's just sitting there gathering dust kind of thing. So if this is important to us, I think we need to say that the policy committee should get on. But nothing with Janice as the chair of the committee. It's just it sort of isn't on the list. So. You have anything you want to add?
Well, I just, we did already have a policy committee, because last meeting, we reminded us about the motion in September, I believe, of last year, and calling it anything that would encourage the leadership of the policy committee to remain there, so there's no votes to September.
Somehow it got missed off the list that transferred everything, and I think that's how come it's escaped our attention, so. So, okay, everybody's had an opportunity to say something. Does somebody want to make a motion? Fran?
So I'll move that we don't extend policy. It's right, so we got that part of it. That we award the after-school care contract to the Boys and Girls Club for 1 year.
Any discussion?
I have no problem with the intent of the motion, but just going to Lori's comment, is that we're awarding something that really hasn't been asked for. I'm wondering if there's a prior step.
Who's part of their
If
request?
acceptable.
Yeah.
They can say no.
Okay. That's fine, yeah, that's fine.
Trustee Goldberg is going to say anyway, that the first bullet on the request was for an after-school care program, because we have from after school till 6 p.m. in the multi-purpose room. Then the next request was for part 2 of the kinder care program, which would start at 11:30, and that's where they're looking at modifications for this one. So this is meeting their number one.
Okay, you can clarify.
Okay, so any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. So Len, just a question, how do things like this usually get communicated?
We have to write a letter from the board.
Okay, that would be fine, thank you. Okay, that's old business. Now on to management report, Comox Valley District Literacy Plan.
I'm
sorry?
Just on the RFP.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
You wanted to close that loop, or, I mean, you could, it is in the paper, as you know.
Yeah.
You could just let it run, and I could advise people, you know, at a later date that it's not going to be acted upon, or take a motion actually.
What do you need from us? Do you need it to be really formal, or just direction?
Well, it's just about communication, but I'm not sure what message you want to communicate out to those. I mean, in some ways, it'd be nice to run an ad and say it's cold, because then people may not go to the work, but it
Yeah.
may be a bit late for that, too, right? There may be people that, you know, halfway through the story, so to speak, but
Yeah.
probably, I guess, I think about it best would be to write for an application.
Okay.
We'll move that we rescind the RFPs. This is not form of policy.
Okay, any discussion on that? Lori?
I guess I'm just wondering if, Len, if people do an RFP, how long can we hold on to it? If we're just giving them a year to cite this after-school program, could be,
Wait, then, if I could just talk about past history, and it's more personal, like maybe not what the district's done, but if something get less than a year, you might consider it, like if something comes up a second time, sometimes you'll go back over the list and if, you know, you felt it was a good process, you may pick more off of it, right? It really is sort of a, how the board or the individual involved are feeling, whether, you know, the time is long enough that they should go, because there may be a completely different mix up there, right? And this one I would think actually the nature of it is that the people that are in daycares do tend to be a bit more fluid than some businesses.
Fran?
I would lean towards putting out another ad saying that we're rescinding it and we'll maybe presenting a revised version for the discussion on the matter. Because that way people will have a sense of where we're at and what we're doing, as opposed to we just changed our mind and avoiding the perception we just decided to give it to the Boys and Girls Club. So explaining, given the now the understanding of space issues at Aspen and the board's intent to revisit the policy, we're rescinding it at this time.
So you want to amend this? What motion have you got there, Debbie?
I've got to rescind the RFP according to policy. I was going to ask for clarification on the last part.
Since it doesn't comply with policy.
Do you want to add an amendment?
Current policy.
I like that amendment that Darren
That was the original motion.
okay, then I would leave that, and then if we could just direct that an ad would go into the paper clarifying that for the public. So I don't know if you need a motion for that ad.
How do you do it?
You be okay if this one carries? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, maybe Fran, you can send your thoughts around that through an email to Len, so then he doesn't have to go through the pain and torture of watching this webcast to find out what we said. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion? Opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. Thanks for the further work on that one. Okay, Mary Ann?
Thank you to the board for calling this special meeting. So you have now a copy, the draft copy of our district receipt plan. I just would like to, before we take a look at it, to acknowledge the two people who've been, Danielle Houston, who's the coordinator of our district literacy committee, who's done so much work in increasing the awareness of literacy in the community, and a couple of other people, Judy Brooks and Janice Nicklin and Karen Barr, who've really been with this process right from the get-go. So in the first year, we set 5 goals, or 5 objectives, and so the plan that you have in front of you shows the progress that has been made on those objectives this year. And that was the intention of what we wanted to present, to sort of show how we've been moving as a community, and I think there's been some significant events that have been held here. Lots of good work going on. Okay? So if the board has had a chance to look at this and is willing to approve it, it would be attached to the
Contract.
and submitted to the NCAA.
Anybody have any questions for Mary Ann about this?
Nope, I was just going to make a motion to approve the district.
Drop the, as presented, is that okay? As presented. Ma'am?
I'm just concerned because I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so, I don't know what makes the most sense at this stage. Whether it's summary or,
Would you like to hear a little more about it?
well, I'm just wondering about the timing because I haven't had a chance to read it, so I don't know if,
Yeah, so
Cole's notes.
Cole's notes.
Well, the community literacy committee, I don't know how much Cole knows you want, because I can go over them. Reading Cole's notes, okay. We set 2 objectives last year to try and to increase awareness of literacy in the community in a number of different areas. So there's literacy in the early years, school age years, adult and Aboriginal communities. So we gathered a committee and set 5 objectives. And then over the course of this year, there were a number of events in the community to support literacy, 2 large community forums, and 1 event during Family Literacy Week, or a number of events that occurred during Family Literacy Week. And so it's documented in here the numbers of people who attended those events, the types of events. And we also were given, this is funded through grants from 2010, from Life Since 2010, and we received some funding probably about February, and 10 or 15 grants were handed out to community organizations who had identified literacy initiatives, and I reported on that at a previous board meeting, but that's part of this funding too, to try and increase initiatives in the community that supported literacy. That's really important.
So, Mary Ann, how many different organizations from our community are part of this?
If you turn to page 16 and 17, no, 15 and 16, it shows the groups as well. And those are the groups listed on those 2 pages are actually the people who attended all the meetings. So the steering committee that's made up of 67 people, that's the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 people on the list. And then other people attend a monthly meeting, and more often than not, all the people on these 2 pages attend. We hold these meetings at the library, and the Vancouver Island Regional Library, Courtney Branch, is actually the steward and holds the grant. And we felt last year when we first embarked on this path that it was better to have, instead of having the school district be the steward and sort of the disperser of the funding, that it be a community group. So that's why the library is kind of the center of this. Although the school district does have to do management and things like that of this process.
So really, essentially, it's quite a community-based initiative, but the government says that the final authority is the school district that sort of rubber stamps, essentially, what the community's plan is.
Yes.
And although you are quite involved with it, but
Yeah,
we're,
very involved,
yeah.
but I really think the way that this will work is that the community
Yeah.
is the center of it. So that was our,
Yeah.
that was our goal from the beginning.
and this seems to be Tom, and then
Well,
Dan.
thank you, this is a very detailed report. If it's to be submitted to the Ministry of Education, I'm curious, in places you have, you list something in question mark behind it, so is that a question mark to the group, or is it a question mark for the reader?
Reference you to the spot.
Well, there's like on page 13, just in that search box, it says Boys and Girls Club, question mark. Later in the document, on page 14, under what we still need to do, it says expand, question mark.
Yeah, some of it's still kind of ideas. I mean, it's very much a document that's,
But it's a question that the committee's asking themselves, as opposed to a question that's attached to something that you're sending on for, like as a report, right?
It's internal, yeah, it's an internal question. So what's the direction should we go in? Should we be approaching this group? Is this our next step?
Okay, thank you.
Dan?
Quick one under goal number 2 on Celebrate Family Literacy Day. You're projecting for 2010 banner on Comox Hill. You got the one for Courtney this year. You should also know there's one up in Cumberland too, one of those structures for banners.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
We'll put one up there next year.
So any more questions or comments with respect to this? Okay, so we have the motion on the floor then to adopt the literacy plan as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Secretary Treasurer's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first one is just, I know this has been before the board a couple of times, about the AFG, the actual restricted funds available through the capital plan and the local capital. And I think the motion is quite clear what the board would desire and is very willing to bring back that report in September, with all available funds and potential uses. And of course, we'll tie it in a bit with what we discussed at the last meeting, the AFG, and the lack of seeing what they're going to give us for the current year we're in now, as of July 1, and some things have happened since then.
You want to say what things have happened since then, or no?
Not really.
Okay.
We're only 2 days into it, man. How much could have happened?
Well, I
Give us a
mean,
dollar number, please.
$500,000?
yeah, some of it does look like, and I can't say this as a fact, because they will say, well, they just haven't told us how much they're giving us for 09-10, which is the year we just started. But given how it played out, it does appear that they've taken what they used to call quarter 1, which was our fourth quarter, and moved that off of our fourth quarter and made it quarter 1 for the next year, which, if that is in fact how it plays out, that would be happening.
Creative bookkeeping?
Sorry?
Creative bookkeeping for the 2010 Olympics?
I would not say that. No, I would not say that.
Creative
And they would have
skipping.
quite a different view of it, because I've had that conversation with some of the people from the Ministry of Ed. They're very clear that there's been no decision made about how much we'll get in 09-10. So they're saying not to do too much of this.
So, read the motion? You need to do that?
Yep.
That management bring forward a capital funds report for the September 29, 2009 public board meeting that details the amounts available for board use, the range of allowable expenditures, and current spending priorities for each of the capital reserve funds and local capital funds.
Any discussion? You want to say something? Debbie?
I believe we are going to have the September board meeting on the 22nd, not the 29th.
Is that yeah, that's the fourth Tuesday, right? Okay. So friendly amendment to make it the 22nd. And I guess for me with this motion, since nobody else is going to say anything, I think that this is the fairest way that we can take a look at all of the needs of the district and prioritize everybody's needs. I know that we've talked a lot about Brooklyn Elementary in the past few months. That's sort of been the catalyst for these discussions we've been having, but I know there are other schools that are asking for improvements. Lake Trail, for example, clearly has been asking for improvements for a while, and Airport and so on, and I think that this is the best way. Allow our staff to give us a priority list and tell us how much money we actually have to spend and take it from there, so I would definitely support this motion. Anyone else? No? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Receive management report. Motion to receive management reports. We have a seconder?
No.
Oh, there's an, oh, there is. I'm sorry. Sorry, I missed that.
We'll read the rather long list this month. For retirement, Diane Anderson, Administrative Assistant at North Island Education School, retired June 30th, 2009, 16 years of service with the district. Catherine Askew, teacher, Airport Elementary, retired June 30th, 2009, after 30 years of service with the district. BCC teacher, certified 1979. Dean Doherty, teacher, GP Danny Secondary School, also retired June 30th, 2009, 20 years of service with the district, certified 1984. Doug Embry, teacher, GP Danny, retired June 30th, 2009, after 39 years of service with the district. Wow.
Yeah, that's
He was certified in 1971. Marta Fitty, teacher, Airport Elementary School, June 30th, 2009, 22 years of service with the district, and was certified in 1981. Jennifer Forbes, teacher, Huban Park Elementary, retired effective June 30th, 2009, 17 and a half years of service with the district. Susan Gillespie, work experience program worker, GP Vanier Secondary, retired June 30th, 12 years of service with the district. Terry Eisner, library clerk, Lake Trail School, retired June 30th, 2009 as well, 19 years of service with the district. Isabel Pakala, work experience program worker, GP Vanier Secondary School, also retired June 30th, 27 years of service with the district. Dave Perry, teacher, Highland Secondary School, also retired June 30th, 20 years of service with the district. And my friends to know I actually went to high school.
You did? I was on a swim team with him. I've seen him in a Speedo. How about that? I really hope he's watching tonight. I don't think he will be.
Michelle Power, education assistant, elementary resource, Valley View Elementary School, June, retired effective June 25th, 19 years of service with the district. Dorothy Woodburn, distance ed systems clerk, North Island Education School, also retired June 30th, 8 years of service with the district. And finally, Lisa Bobasel, teacher, Nicole Thomas Park Elementary School, July 31. Will be retirement for that. Resign. Oh, sorry, resign. Thank you. After 3 years of service with the district.
Thank you. We wish them well. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Where are we at here? Board committee report. I'd just like to report that we've had the second meeting now with management and trustees today to work on team building exercises, and I think it was a great thing that we did that, and still feeling pretty positive. So, go team. So that's what we were doing in here this afternoon. Okay, finance committee. Danny.
Okay, well, we met on June 8th. First item on the agenda was the trustee travel budget, and there was a suggestion that some of the travel funds be used to buy paperless equipment. There was a discussion amongst the committee, and it was the decision of the committee that we felt that this was not a valid use of educational funding, so we're rejecting the proposal. DPAC funding and district support was Secretary Treasurer was tasked with following up on the funding available for DPAC and PACs. We reported out, I guess, at some point in the future. There's something comparison around the motion that we were going to do matching funds. I believe the motion was a couple of years ago.
For DPAC.
For DPAC?
Sorry, I don't remember that one,
They sent me an email. I don't remember what it was.
but, well, it was the $2,500, right?
$2,500, but they said up to $2,500, but it was a matching.
What I remember the matching is they also got money like that from the
Direct access.
direct access.
Direct access,
And that was
yeah.
kind of the, you're right, in that
Yeah.
sense, they were equal amounts, and I
Yeah.
think that's what generated it, that was my
Okay.
thought.
Yeah.
When I was DPAC, that is what I advocated for, was with the district to match funds with the direct access grant.
Then gave the verbal update on Halby Hall, which,
Like I could give a very brief update. They were quite interested in our letter to them, and they had follow-up questions, so they are still considering, and they do promise to get a letter back to us.
Sure. Something. So we'll receive the Finance Committee report.
Any discussion? Well, I have some discussion. I disagree
The
with
answer
your,
is no.
I disagree with your recommendation. As you can see with all the reports that were attached to the agenda, the BCSTA has done some work, and most boards provide actually additional funding for technology, and I still think that we could, within our existing budget, not additional funds, but within our existing budget, provide for some funding for trustees for a laptop or telephones and such. That's just me. Anyone else? Fran?
I also take a wider view of education. I think that education means informing yourself the best that you can in order to make the best decisions you can. And sometimes that means going to conferences, and sometimes that means an increased efficiency of how we do what we do anyway. And if that increased efficiency includes technology, and if we don't need to find more money anywhere, but have money that some of us don't use because some of us don't go to as many conferences, have access to those funds to meet the same goal, I would want to do that.
Some of us have a little bit of loyalty to the steel workers who generate the logs that make the people.
He don't generate the law. That's Thomas.
Again, I have a somewhat broader view than my trustees from the Finance Committee, but I'm wondering if it makes sense to perhaps do a little bit of homework to see exactly what such a thing would cost. Because I don't know. I know sort of Staples prices and future shop prices, but I don't know what it would cost to equip us in a way that I think some of the trustees envision, and use that as a bit of a springboard to a further discussion about whether there's a reallocation that should take place within this budget envelope, or if there are other opportunities within existing budget envelopes that trustees have access to.
Or just having gotten one not too far back, it's probably less than $700 for a decent laptop.
My netbook was $400.
So I
there's
think
the
that
range.
demonstrates my point.
There's your
we're all over
research.
that.
So it's not a lot of money. And what do we have, $1,500 per trustee and discretionary travel or something?
I think if I may, just to conclude as well, that this is would be an investment in technology. I mean, it does not become a property of trustees; it's property of the school district, and will. And I appreciate technology changes all the time, but I'd like to believe that if computers were purchased, that they would at least last one or two terms, as opposed to just a shorter period. So it's a longer investment as opposed to just for us.
So Susan's Commodore 64 would suffice.
I wish I still had my Atari, to be honest with you. That was the best computer I ever had 20 years ago. Anyone else? Well, okay, all those in favor of accepting the management, or the finance committee report? Opposed? That is carried. Fine. Policy advisory, was there anything to,
No, so I'll speak on behalf of the chair who is absent tonight. The minutes are in your package. And I trust they're self-explanatory. If there's any questions or clarifications, I'll be happy to do my best to answer them.
No,
Seeing none, sort of ask that the policy advisory committee minutes be adopted as presented.
okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Education committee?
So I would normally speak to this, but I get to defer to my trustee colleague to my left to chair the committee on my behalf.
Big shoes to fill, by the way, so. And really, I didn't have much work to do, I just wanted to serve on with it, but we had a lovely time at Highland. And we're able to see the artwork room there, which I think, to many of us, was astounding. I came out of town in the city of this district. There were paintings there that I assumed he had bought from somewhere else. So it was really quite impressive to see some of the work that's being done in our schools. And we got to meet Robin Farrell, who is the little winner. And he was an interesting young man who engaged us and answered our questions and really treated us nicely. That's always good. The rest is in my report here. I shan't talk a lot, but our thanks to Highland for having us. And that's that. Move to receive that.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Here's the gavel. Don't hit me with it.
Board appointees to other bodies and committee structure, new business, budget process, trustee Barr.
So I have a motion here that the Finance Committee, Finance Committee 1, review the current process for receiving budget proposals, setting annual budgets, and for reporting on actual expenditures. And 2, make a recommendation to the board by October 27, 2009, regarding a budgeting process that is inclusive of partner groups and which makes use of practical reporting to support increased transparency, accountability, and inclusive planning.
Just to clarify, that's one motion with two parts to it. So October 27th is the deadline for both sides of that motion. Sorry, you did clarify. Is that the intent?
Yeah, the intent is there to be a discussion and then a recommendation.
Okay, it's been seconded for discussion. Any comments, discussion, items, Susan?
So I believe that this is a reflection of what we heard during the budget process. It was kind of strange to be considering some additions when we were in a position of having to make cuts. When we had our meetings with the public, often a couple of times they expressed a desire to have more information, and I think that we've talked about this already a little bit, that if we could have the Finance Committee in conjunction with Len review the policy and come up with some other way of doing this, then we'd sort of get a running start, I think, at the budget next year, and more information would be known. For example, this year we weren't too sure what cuts had already been made in a number of areas for district positions, such as speech and language or the gifted program or whatever, and so we were sort of thinking, should we have additions, add those back, should we consider new proposals or what? So I think if we have all that information up front to a committee or something, then we hit the ground running, and it doesn't take us 10 meetings to get through the budget process. We can do it quicker and it's more inclusive. So I hope that you support this and let the Finance Committee work with Len to come up with a different way of doing it.
Any other comments? Mr. Rich?
One, maybe like a little clarification, like the idea of early, always better, of course, the budget, the more time we have to look at it, the better. The last sentence referring to increased transparency, accountability, and inclusive, maybe we'll look to question of, is that really what people, or the chair believes about processes? But I think that our intent, has always been to have that kind of process, and I think in past years we have been successful. I just didn't want people to have that impression unless that is clearly what the chair is.
In this case, I'm a trustee, just speaking to this. I don't believe for a second that you're not transparent or accountable. I don't believe that for a second. What I think is that we can do more to increase how we understand the numbers when they come to us and what the partner groups understand when they're presented with information and attend meetings. So it's just to improve that. So it's, I don't know, for me personally, at more of a lay person's level of understanding of the numbers, and that would help me, and I think some partner groups. So yeah, no, I think you're doing a great job, to be really clear.
So what I hear your point being is that it's the word increase that's suggesting that we're not doing, the district isn't, or you in particular aren't doing it. And I've heard Trustee Barr say that that's not the intent. Is that okay for you, for the record?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, you go back in history when we set public budget meetings. This goes back years ago when we had taxation authority. That was the big thing, where you would get basically all the various groups presenting to the entire board at a public meeting. Back then it was in the building. It was no longer here according to Junior. And from there the board would decide where they would set the tax rate and what they would include. So it was a really good process back then. And the government interfered.
I'm happy struggling with how to spend the money that we do get, rather than also trying to figure out how much money to take from people to spend. That's a point taken. Any other comments before the questions called? Okay. The motion on the table as is written. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee remuneration and expenses. Lynn.
So this is our yearly duty out of policy 1000 at the state that we bring this forward. I hate to say how small the CPI increase was from previous years. I would have to say, actually, from my perspective, given that all employees are still in years getting raises, that I don't see a problem with the board doing this. I know it's one of those things that's quite symbolic to the board, and it's probably likely not get the support, but I always feel that if you don't do a little bit all the time, then you hit the large jump at a later date, and it's even more painful. Of course, the board has big discretion in how they go.
What would a large jump be? 0.6?
16.8% would be a large jump. Okay, so you see the recommendation before you there? Does anyone want to make the motion?
Motion that the board approve an increase of 0.4% to the budgets for trustee remuneration and travel.
Second for discussion?
Okay, any discussion?
It would almost buy your laptop.
Any discussion? Fran?
As little as it is, I don't think we should be approving increases at this stage, but we take the opportunity to reiterate what I mentioned a few moments ago about using existing funds in a different way that helps us get the job done.
And I won't be supporting it either. And I appreciate it's only 0.4, and it may be perceived as strictly optics, but it's still be optics, and it's not the right climate to take anything.
Anyone else?
In advocating for it, too, realizing how much work the board has done and continues to do seems very small. I just want to acknowledge the fact that the amount of hours you folks put in for the pay you get is very minimal.
Thanks. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? unanimously. And then there's also attached Boards of Education 2009 survey from the BCFCA. Here's the gavel again, Mr. Weber.
We have item 3 on the new business, Explorer program. Trustee Barr.
Just make a motion that management brings a report forward to the October 27th, 2009 public board meeting that outlines the implications of making the Explore program with 2004-2005 staffing and prep time levels a district program.
Okay, Susan?
So I'm the liaison trustee for Vanier, where the Explore program is at. And my understanding is that as staffing ratios have sort of, I guess, increased, I never know if I say that right, where the class sizes get larger, it becomes more difficult to sustain a program within their staffing allotment along the lines of Explore, where there's a lot more preparation time required in order to make that program run. So the thought is, I wonder what would happen if we took it out of the school staffing allowance and made it a district program and staffed it at a level that would help it to run according to the previous class size ratios that had existed and prep time levels that have been given. So it's sort of a query at this point to see what would come from that, if it makes sense to do that, and to get a report back from management in the fall so that we can more fully understand a decision like this before we would proceed or decline it. So that's why I have it here, so we can become more informed and make a decision in the fall.
Before I go to Ms. Elwood, any trustees' comment at this point? Sherry?
I would certainly be more than eager to provide you a report on that. We just asked for point of clarification. So did the genesis of this come from the desire of the trustee to ask about how we could get to a place where it was 2004-2005 staffing the prep time? Or is there a genesis that we wanted to be a district program? Because it could be profoundly different things. District program speaks to a philosophy about that program being a district program and has other implications, good, probably good and maybe not so good. But or is it that you're simply seeking a change in the staffing ratio to the 2004-2005 staff? Or should I ponder both in the report? Are you seeing the only way to get to 2004 staffing and prep time levels as it being a district program, which perhaps in error we've been talking about it for the last 4 months, as the reason it was presented was that it was no longer a district program and that's why it was not at the same staffing level? Or are you asking that you want to have a district program for the philosophical reasons that a program would become a district program?
Can I answer?
Please, because I was lost 4 district programs ago.
I think this philosophically, I think this already is a district program. I go to Highland Grad, and I hear how many kids really enjoyed the Explore program, and I hear it from Isfeld, same thing, how many kids enjoyed the Explore program. The thing is that if we decrease the class size or increase their prep time, that has an effect on the other classes that run in Vanier. And so somebody in a Chem 12 class might have 32 kids in their class, and PE 11 might have 35 kids in their class or something, in order to accommodate the increased prep time, as I understand it, that's required to run the Explore program. So I can see, I don't think that the board has any business in interfering in those school decisions that are made. They do those decisions for reasons that make sense to the school, and I think we should respect that. However, I do feel, after talking to them, that there is some possibility that the Explore program is in jeopardy because of the increased workload that the increased prep time has caused. And so I think we should explore seeing, that's funny, look into changing Explore into a district program so that it could be funded out of a separate pot.
And there may be ways you can attach it that doesn't have to be used for in order to expand the staffing and prep time. So should I do both?
Yeah, if you think, I mean, I'm...
Primary district.
I've never staffed a high school in my life. I have no idea really fully how this would work. It would be perfect if you could, any ideas you have would be great.
So are we okay at that part of the table? Any other comments, trustees? Seeing none, question is, the motion is before us as written and stated. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, Tom, very much for taking the gavel a couple of times. Lori, over to you with respect to community schools.
I'm going to make a motion that the board secure and freeze the current funding level from operating grants for our community schools for the next 3 years.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Lori?
I'm just going to read this because my brain's on holiday mode. It is July. A recent regional district grant was able to allow VHA, NCFD, RCMP, and the school board to investigate how to implement integrated services into our island schools. This is a 3 to 5 year plan and has recently been implemented into Hornby Island Elementary School. I request the board to commit to freezing the operating grant funding to ensure our community coordinators can utilize these funds as leverage for other grants, corporate, public, and private donations that generate $100,000 to $150,000 annually to help run these island programs. Ensuring secure funding will help this project as well as many other ministry-mandated programs. For example, after-school programs, hot lunch program, teen tutoring support, teen drop-ins, boys club, girls group, toddler drop-in, parent education, and many more that are currently running in our community schools. Our students' educational needs are supported with these basic services that many of us take for granted in the Valley, and using the excuse that they chose to live there does not change the fact that they are students at School District 71. Having a freeze on the operating grant budget will allow our community coordinators to have some stability with funding to continue their efforts of providing quality programs to our students. With this being said, I hope the board will commit to freezing the operating grant funding.
Okay, anyone else? Danny?
Well, I guess having been around since the community school started here, and it was one of those ministry programs that they promoted, they funded to the tune of $75,000 a year for each of them, with the exception of Cumberland, which was a latecomer. I'm supporting your motion, so don't get me wrong there. What I'm pointing out is the fact that here's another one where the government has turned around, dropped the ball, left the money, saying we're not funding it anymore. It's in the funding envelope that you get for students, so it didn't matter whether you had one community school or 10 community schools, you had to start coming up with the money yourself. So it's, again, just one more example of where they've been downloading the costs on the individual boards, and we're the ones that have to cut in order to come up with money for the programs that they initiate.
Kareem?
So my understanding, Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're at 20, 2010, so 23 is the
Yes.
Okay, so, well, I admire and appreciate the work that's being done by the community schools on the island. I can't support your motion as it's currently written. And I say this because I believe there has to be provision of those funds amongst our three community schools, and Hornby and Cumberland. I'm soon going to read them because mine's not quite with this. Many, if not all, of the programs that Lori mentioned are running on Hornby also are currently running in Cumberland. And I've actually had the privilege of attending several Cumberland Community School Society meetings. And I got to tell you, I'm astonished at the variety and the numbers of programs that they are able to run out there on their limited budget. And the programs are full, like packed full. They have kids that are coming out of the union for these programs. So clearly there is a need for those programs in Cumberland. Cumberland also does not have a charitable tax status right now. And this makes it very difficult for them to raise additional funds. So they rely on the money that we give them largely because they are a small community that is heavily taxed by other interest groups, scouting, whatever it might be. It's very difficult for them to get more money. And so, for me, I could support the motion if it were amended to make the money allotment more equitable, either by dividing the $50,000 in 3 ways, or us finding additional funds to bring Cumberland up to the status of want to be better than currently have, so I can't support raising it at the time.
Anyone else have some comments? Tom and then Fran?
So maybe another question for Secretary Treasurer. What gives me pause around this is it's a bit of a crystal ball motion because it's over multiple years, and I'm not aware of other budgets that we manage and sort of lock them down for 2 or 3 years, with essentially a guarantee, regardless of what our finances may be or may not be. So from a principled approach, I think it's reasonable to, I think everybody would like to have 3 years of defined funding, but it seems out of step with what we do elsewhere, and I'm wondering about opening potentially Pandora's box with this type of an approval, because I would suspect that others would come forward and say, how about us guarantee our money for the next 3 years? So is that a normal way of doing business?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it's unusual. I'm not aware of any other part that we actually throw guarantees there.
Thank you.
Fran?
My question was similar to Tom, wondering about what you were saying, Lauren, in terms of needing it for 3 years in order to leverage for other grants. Is there, does 1 year preclude any application for grants? That there's a usual 1 year budget process?
It's my understanding that they have to jump the hoops each year, and it's a very bizarre process that they have to go through. It's very time consuming, and a lot of times what happens is the community coordinators and principals overlap, and there's a lot of miscommunication that happens, and the community coordinator doesn't know if it's part of the principal's position or if it's part of the coordinator's position. What they're wanting is to know, like, it is a line item in our budget each year. Basically what they want is, we want to know that we don't have to apply for this each year, because even though it is a line item, they have to go through the process. I'm trying to think.
You want to say something, Mike?
I just, my normal practice was for me not to continue though with the ones within the budget, unless the board, made a direct motion differently, it would roll from 1 year to the next. But of course, that's open to the interpretation of as we review it this year as well.
And would it stay at the same line item amount?
Yes, and if I could, I'm sorry. I think what they struggle with is how late our process is for them, as much as anything. Because I know when we finally see, okay, the budget's done, put to bed, then they can go on with their work, knowing it's there. I think maybe this would be one we might be able to help them at least. I mean, not sort of guarantee it, but if we can come to a conclusion about this earlier in the process, I think would be very helpful.
I guess maybe that's where I'm coming in with. Maybe securing is the incorrect wording, but guaranteeing that we value community schools and what their relationship is in the district. Sherry?
Part of the process for them is that as they use $8 from the school district and start using $3 through grants and things, they work on the corporate year. And so they very often are needing to write grants in January, February, or usually around May, March 14th kind of deadline. Sometimes some grants may be April 30th. But even April 30th doesn't match our timeline, so just knowing that that budget item is going to roll over like it has for the previous year. So that's part of what it is. And then taking that straw and turning it into gold in terms of $1, they can usually find it under 2 or 3. Some of those grants have shifted in the last 15 years to be 2-year grants, or some of them have actually gone to 3-year grants. Particularly some of the grants that are coming out of community access kind of things, where you're looking about in the first year implementing the program, in the second year refining the program, and in the third year trying to make it stand on its own 2 feet so they're not applying for another grant. So that's part of the stability that they're looking for as they go out into the broad world of trying to find funding from a variety of different places. That's one of the reasons why they're asking for that knowledge, that if they're secure that they have the $1, they can work at different levels earlier on, January, March, to turn into 2 more or 3 more. And the landscaping or grants have changed. It's very different.
Did you have something you want to say then?
No.
Okay, so, we have the motion on the floor, and anybody want to make an amendment?
That was what I was intending to do, was propose an amendment to include Cumberland at $20,000.
How the heck do we do this one? Here it
And
is.
70,000, or 70 million plus budget, an extra $10,000 really isn't a significant amount. I would take it out of the trustee budget.
You never spend anything anyways. Okay, so how do you want to word that?
Amendment to include Cumberland, or to increase Cumberland by $10,000 to be equal with the
Cumberland
other two
funding.
community schools.
And I didn't hear that.
I think at the very end of it, the amendment would be an increased Cumberland funding to equal other community schools funding.
So you couldn't say that the board secured freeze, have put increase up there. The board secured an increase Cumberland funding.
Oh, okay, you could do that too. Secure an increased Cumberland funding to equal other community schools funding. I hate amendments. Doesn't matter, you can change the intent. Somebody, you got a brainwave, Dr. Tini? You looked like you had a brainwave.
Subsequent motion, then, forget the amendment, deal with this one, do it as a subsequent motion.
Yeah, okay.
Funding.
My piece is going to be just, the budget has been approved,
Yeah,
and you just did that.
yeah.
So, here, the changes to do in addition, I just finished doing the budget. Your motion about that, where I was going was, you just talked about having a budget advisory committee or a process is more, more rigorous and clarity involved. And given the timing is a common section. For something like this seems like the perfect two-plus thing to get into a structure like that early, so that there are plenty of information is already secured for people that want to become one, but actually pick up and focus on something in the fall for the next year. I just ended up with this budget, making an addition to the
Green?
Then for this year, rather than increase that, could we divide that 50,000 three ways?
Sorry. Okay, just wait a minute. Here, just a second. We're going to start. I know, Carrie, say you haven't started. You're already well underway to getting out of hand on this motion. So, what we have on the floor right now, let's just go back to what we have on the floor, is the motion as it's stated in the agenda. So, we have a choice to either vote on this one, or somebody can propose a amendment. And if somebody wants to come up with an amendment, Danny, did you want to make an amendment, or no?
Can I suggest that they're really two separate items?
Yeah.
Okay, so then if they are two separate items, then we will just vote
One of the
this.
things about community schools, and the reason that Cumberland, I think, was lower than the rest, is the Cumberland community still has access to facilities over here, like CRA, the two aquatic centers, etc., these ice rinks, which the students from and the community from the 200s really do not. Particularly Hornby Island does not, because you can't get over here and back in a reasonable amount of time.
I have a suggestion to make, that we might want to remove secure and freeze and just change that to maintain. You might want to consider doing something like that. And it doesn't give Cumberland more money, but it doesn't preclude them getting more money in the future. So,
And how about
it's
putting-
just a suggestion.
An increase from 2010 to 2011 budget to the this budget, 09, 10 has been done.
I think we can take, yeah, we have done the budget already, right? So we can take,
Ratify that, it doesn't have to be 2020, it can still be 16.
so you could, so somebody, I'm still looking for someone to put an amendment forward on this. This is your last chance, or we're going to proceed to vote on the motion here.
You're looking to just add the word, a single word rather than the word itself, that would
Yeah.
capture what I think I'm hearing you say, but it may not, if you wanted to vote on the increase in carbon assembly, you'll do it, but all you need to do is rather than that the board equalize and increase the current funding level to what they're at for community schools for the next 3 years, which would include $20,000 for each community school. Yeah.
Okay, there's another suggestion, so does anybody want to make an amendment or
That's
not?
what Sherry said would be my
Okay,
amendment.
can you put your hand up? Okay, so what is it that the board equalize and freeze?
Is it equalize and maintain?
Equalize and maintain.
Equalize
You said freeze, but I want
and maintain the current funding level from operating grants for our community schools for the next 3 years.
We want to do that as well?
Yeah.
With
Which
the,
would
to include each community school, receiving $20,000.
in 2010.
Receiving $20,000 when?
For each community school.
For each community school receiving $20,000 when? Right away?
Community school.
I wouldn't, I think I would go back to verification first.
Okay, period. Okay, so the amendment then? Let's see if I have this, well, Debbie, maybe you're
The
probably...
amendment is to include equalize and maintain, and remove secure and freeze, and include at the end, which would include $20,000 for each community school. Be included.
Okay, that's the amendment. Anybody want to speak to the amendment?
That's a discussion?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I want to speak to it.
go, Mr. Weber.
So,
Trustee Weber.
I'm not going to come anywhere near supporting it for some of the reasons that I've already said and won't repeat, but I feel also need to add the very valid points that occurred to me as Superintendent Trustee Superintendent Keene was talking, that this feels really willy-nilly. Let's just throw another $10,000. We've had absolutely no discussion about that. Danny's provided a bit of a context, and that's instructive, but just on the face of let's equal them, because they're all community schools, seems fashionably inconsistent with how we ought to be doing business, and I think hugely inconsistent with what we've just talked about in terms of our budget development process. So here we've had really been no process. It's just let's throw another 10 grand at the Cumberland Community School to make it look equal. And I don't know, does that make it look equal, or is that unequal? Because Cumberland is in a, as Danny pointed out, Starcraft's in a better situation than Hornby and Denver. So I think it's fraught with tons of problems, so I won't be supporting it.
Fran?
I, like Tom, won't be supporting it either, even though I do support the concept and principle of the community school funding. My concern is that this is moving further and further away from our norm in terms of the budget process. So that's my hesitation.
Anyone else on the amendment?
Well, I guess trustees all through the terms and over the school year, you're going to find that there's going to be things come up that are going to take some kind of funding. You'll be passing motions to increase funding quite ad hocly on various items, and it's probably no different than changing this additional $10,000. 500 extra students coming in next year, you'll be changing your budget real fast. So.
Let's hope. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? And the amendment is carried. So now we'll vote on consider the amended motion.
Motion is amended.
Anyone care to comment on the amended motion?
Call the question.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as amended? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you. On to correspondence. Jeannie Cameron, Band 7. So, there's a couple things contained in there. I guess one was a discussion about a desire to have a district fine arts committee, and actually Jeannie Cameron did convene a meeting of fine arts people, and Trustee Caton and myself attended. So it sounds as if that is going to get off the ground. And interestingly, there's probably going to be an inclusive education committee starting in the fall as well, out in the community. So should make for more advice for us, which is always good. The other thing that Jeannie is wondering about is doing a trial Band 7 program in a school this fall. So just wondering what the board's feedback is with respect to that, if you feel that we should go down that road, or we had put a motion on the floor to defer any decision about Band 7 for a year. So anyone want to deviate from that at this point? No. Okay. So we'll just leave that maybe as board information. That's all right? Okay. Item number 2, Policy and Program Officer, Local Government Program Services, 2008 School Community Connection, Strengthening Connection. We got some money, and that's great. Yes. Any discussion on that? Okay, well, good news with Mr. Weber. It's 8:17, and we've concluded this portion of our business for the evening. Is there any questions and inquiries from the media? Go ahead, Michael. This year, for the fall.
Very well, as soon as you announce it, I guess.
I mean, I guess I should ask, like, how do you know they need it?
I think their funding had been established at actually quite a bit higher than that in the past, and we sort of picked away at it and cut it over time, is my understanding.
It used to be $150,000 between those 3 schools.
Oh, yeah.
4 years ago.
Probably, that's probably a little further back than 5, 6.
And just through budget, I guess, constraints is whittled down.
Right, the government quit funding it, but us basically said the district take them over. They took the cuts the same as everybody else did.
Okay, anyone from the public? Janice?
Yeah, I'd like to know if I could send in a letter from you. I'll do it 5 board meetings in a row, asking for custodial allowance for an extra $10,000 in each letter.
That would certainly be your prerogative to do that. Welcome. Anyone else? Tony?
I'm just a little confused about the September 22nd meeting and the capital funds. There is a capital plan now. So is that just getting thrown out the window and you're starting from fresh? Or what's happening with September 22nd?
We have got different pots of money. Probably Len should explain this. He'd probably do a better job than me.
Yeah, you have it there. There's several different shares of pots of money. I hate that word, pot of money, but anyway, yeah.
There's the kitty.
There's restricted capital, which is we have some funds from projects that we brought in under budget. There's about $5 million in one for seismic projects we manage on our own, and we manage to do it for less money. So that money becomes the district in the sense it goes to our bank account, but we have to ask permission from the government to spend it. So that's the big sort of regular capital. There's a local capital which has come about from us selling some properties that were purchased far enough back in time that the board actually paid for them. So if the board paid for them, they get the money back. And it's the board's call on what to spend, as long as it is on capital. And So that, but that can be down as low as small equipment, right? Because our choice, government's choice is their money don't stay with the project. So you have those two pieces, and then to tie it in with your annual facilities grant, just to do that, which we get a 1.6, or we usually get a $1.6 million. And then what I was going to bring back was all those funding costs, and then have the projects there, and with what we perceive to be the priorities, and then have the board, look at it and give us feedback.
So I just want to clarify then, right now, the list that I'm thinking of, it goes Vanier, Lake Trail, Brooklyn. What is that categorized under?
Yeah, that is the 5-year capital, which the ministry in good years would just fund some projects. They have their ranking system, they take our ranking system, fit it in with them, spread it, your exact budget. Anyway, they fit that into their funding envelope and say, we're going to approve X million dollars, the year is fixed, right, years is far enough. The second piece of that, though, is the 5-year capital plan can also be funded out of restricted capital, which is that first one I was talking about. So it then becomes a point of how much of that restricted capital the board has, would it be willing to put in to entice the ministry into raising where the number 1 project and number 2 projects.
So, back to my original question then, with that list, is that the list that's coming up for topic of movement on September 22nd?
That's not, it's one piece of the big picture, and it has several possibilities where it's funded from, right? But the project, to my mind, the capital project can be changed, but it would have to be before it would have to do that.
So on the top of that list is Vanier for, say, $20 million to do the seismic. We would hope that the government says, here's a check for $20 million, and there you go. Thank you very much. And then we have some more money. Len talked about restricted capital and local capital. Wow, we got $20 million out of the government. Maybe now we could do some other projects around the district to improve some schools.
Okay,
So what we're asking is, Len, can you tell us what work our schools need so that we know really what we should do with this money?
So is there any concern, does the community need to be concerned that, let's say Vanier's number is 20 million, but we only have 10. Does Vanier need to be concerned that, there's other schools underneath that aren't going to cost 20 million, that might cost 10, and they're going to get done first, and we're going to start resaving money to get to the 20 million again? This is what I'm asking. Is this what's going to be discussed at September 22nd meeting?
No, I don't think so.
And again, I don't want to speak for the board. One of the things that we have to decide about is we have, the two large costs on being restricted and local is, do we want to get into a discussion of how much of that to, again, try and entice the ministry to put money in as well, right? Or not, or just wait, right? At which point the money just sits so then no projects will get done because the ministry will not let it jump to number 2, right?
So, is there any worry of the community needing to, PACS are not going to have an opportunity to know about this? Are you going to give that opportunity after September 22nd, that you take it out to these PACS, because if Vanier is going to get bumped down, or Lake Trail is going to get bumped down, the community deserves to know first before you get passed a motion.
We're asking for information. We know we've got some money in the bank, and we have no idea what we should spend it on. These guys know better than we do what it should be spent on. We've talked about a lot of different things. Lake Trail, the HVAC, for example, at Brooklyn. We've talked about a gym at Airport, but really, we have never heard from our staff what should be on the top of our list for those kinds of projects. We know seismically, and for the big $4 million HVAC at Vanier, we know those should be up there, but all of those other projects, we don't really know. So we're asking for some information, and then it'll come to us in September, and we'll see where we go.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, well, have a motion to adjourn? Second, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Thanks.